Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday, February 18th, 2018, the 3rd of Adar, 5778. We are recording from Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel, the capital of the Jewish people. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. Get in touch with me during the week. I appreciate each and every email, tweet, or Facebook message. Josh at thelandofisrael.com is my email, at Josh Hasten on Twitter, and Joshua Hasten on Facebook. And we have a great show for you today. We have two very special guests on the program. One you're going to recognize. He's been on the show before. Danny Seaman. He is the English editor at MIDA, the online magazine, also the former head of the Israeli GPO, the government press office. And, of course, you remember him from the old station. We don't talk about the old station. We don't mention the name of the old station here. And also new to the program here, Lital Shemesh, Israeli television celebrity, news personality, and an anchor on Channel 20. I want to welcome you both here at Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us.
It's truly my pleasure. Glad to have you both on the show. We're going to get right to it. Everything going on in the world of news here over the last 24 hours. I mean, we talked last week on the show about the situation in the north. Things have shifted temporarily south. Over the weekend, a rocket struck a home in the Shar HaNegev Regional Council. This front page of the Jerusalem Post here on Sunday morning. Before that, 4 soldiers injured in when an explosive device went off. A bomb detonated against their Jeep. 2 soldiers, IDF soldiers, in serious condition. And we shall have our brave men and women of the IDF in mind as we continue our weeks. Take a few minutes, people, and have the IDF in your mind. Pray for them. Pray for the well-being and the safety, especially those who were injured along the border. 4 soldiers hurt. And then Israel, of course, retaliating, struck 18 terror targets in Gaza, including a weapons smuggling tunnel. And then after that, of course, Hamas retaliates by firing a rocket, hitting that house down in southern Israel. I want to ask you guys, Lital and Danny, both, what do you make of the situation in the south? Is this a one-off? I mean, it seems like whether it's north, south, we're getting these one-offs all the time. I mean, at what point do we say this is par for the course, or the norm, if you will, take serious action to deter the terrorists from fighting against, from continuing their terror against Israel?
Unfortunately, I think that it will happen the day they make a mistake, meaning even if the house that was hit this week, there were people in the house, and we were lucky, and we are lucky consistently. It always seems to be on a kindergarten, and they hit these places. But it's on a kindergarten when they're on a day off. It's in a house, and the people, this time it didn't explode in the house. It went through the roof and didn't explode. So we've always been lucky. There's a point when it's not that luck runs out. It's just that these things do what they're meant to do, and they kill. So the day it kills children, or you have civilians killed, is the day the government won't be able to continue with its policy of trying to restrain and keep things from getting out of hand. It's already out of hand in my eyes, and they should for every one of these things. So let them understand that it doesn't matter. There's no acceptable extent of violence. Any violence should be not retaliated against, but we should put them in a place where they understand that it's not worth even firing one missile at Israel.
Lital.
Yes, it's Josh, it's over 15 years of rockets that we're getting from Gaza, that we're getting from Hamas. Even when you're seeing rockets being fired by Salafis or other streams, at the end of the day, Hamas is the one who's responsible to everything that's going on in the Gaza Strip. I find it sad that at the end of the day, instead of taking care of their civilians, instead of taking care of their own people in Gaza, they're just using all the money and the goods, confiscating the goods that is entering the Gaza Strip, and using it to build more tunnels, using it to build more rockets. And it's just insane that Israel needs to face terror from the Gaza Strip over 15 years now. It's just unbelievable.
So explain this to me, and this I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this. I mentioned it just a few minutes ago. Israel struck a terror tunnel, which obviously means Israel knew that tunnel existed. Why did Israel wait? Why do we wait for them to fire rockets against us and then retaliate for the world only to turn around and call it a cycle of violence, even though Israel surely has the moral high ground with Hamas firing rockets at our civilian population hiding behind their own people? Why wait when you know they're building these tunnels for them to bomb our soldiers and launch rockets? I believe we should destroy the terror tunnels the second we know they exist, take them out, and I, of course, believe ultimately we have to free Gaza from Hamas.
I totally agree. I asked myself the same question.
I think we have to look at the broader picture here. And in this sense, we keep hearing about Israel needs to withdraw from territories. Israel has to withdraw back to the 67 border. Well, we have a prime example of what would happen. We did withdraw to the 67 borders with everything that has to do with the Gaza Strip. We took out 10,000 Israelis who lived there, destroyed their lives, moved them into the state of Israel. There's not a single living or dead Israeli, because we also removed the bodies from cemeteries. So there's not a single living or dead Israeli in the Gaza Strip. There are bodies, by the way, of 2 of our soldiers, but that's a whole different issue. The point I'm making here is, for all those who tell the state of Israel that if we want peace, we have to withdraw from territories and go back to the 1967 border, well, here you have the example of Gaza. What happened was that the Gaza Strip became a launching ground for terrorism and violence against Israelis for the past 15 years. And this has been despite every measure that we've taken to try not only to appease them, but to make peace with them. And they use the areas that we gave them, instead of benefiting their own society, using it to try to destroy us, which they're unsuccessful at. It doesn't really harm the state of Israel, but it's an answer to all those who believe that making concessions to the Arabs who call themselves Palestinians, making concessions to them is going to resolve the situation here. That's not going to resolve it. What will resolve it is if they understand that Israel is here to exist, and they can no longer, and it's unacceptable for them to use violence against us. When the international community makes excuses for their violence, every time there's a reason, you spoke about cycle of violence, that's an excuse. What you have here are the Arabs attacking the state of Israel, not accepting our existence here. When that equation stops, when you stop that, then you'll have a chance of not peace, but resolving the violence here.
And let's remember, before 2005, as Danny mentioned, when we threw our own residents out of Gaza, when we had the beautiful communities of Gush Katif, 10,000 strong and proud residents of the State of Israel, army-serving, tax-paying residents. Before that, there were no terror tunnels. That did not exist. That concept didn't exist. And the second that Israel pulled out, the increase of rockets spiked by 500%. And then, of course, since then, 3 Gaza operations. So I ask you, those who still don't admit what a tragic mistake it was to pull all those people out of their homes in Gush Katif, how they would view the situation, or how they're accepting the situation here today. We're going to move to a different topic on here on the show, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network, landofisrael.com. By the way, Benjamin Bresky's here in the room. Without him, there's just no sound, man. Ben's the man, Benjamin Bresky. The Polish Prime Minister is at it again. I think we mentioned it on last week's program, trying to downplay the role the country of Poland had in the Holocaust, passing a law there essentially making illegal to use the terminology Polish death camp, or exclusively blaming the Poles for what happened to the Jews, despite the fact that we know, and my family personally, I know what happened when the Poles or the Ukrainians or the others who got into bed with the Nazis and had their hands the ability to attack Jews, what happened then. Here we have the Polish Prime Minister at a conference in Munich, by the way, which our Prime Minister is actually at today, a defense conference, saying that Jews, get this, Jews were one of the perpetrators of the Holocaust. I mean, this is beyond that law trying to downplay the Polish role in the Holocaust, actually saying out loud that Jews are part of the perpetrators of the Holocaust. I mean, what do you make of the Polish Prime Minister, guys?
I find it lame. His comment is lame. I find it sad that he's trying to rewrite history, that he's trying to just put it under the rug. The fact that the Polish were collaborating with the Nazis. I think it's just entire Europe is looking at him, thinking, what is going on?
On one part, he's right, because he's saying that the Polish were not responsible for the death camps and for what happened with the Nazis. And he's absolutely right. And we cannot allow Nazi Germany, or even Germany today, who are trying themselves to rewrite history and portray it as if it was part of a broader conflict and the Germans were just victims like everybody else. So he's taking that concept of not ridding the Germans of guilt, but he's perverting it. Because what he's trying to do is clear the conscience of the Polish. Now, I'm not even going to go into what happened during World War II. Because, yes, the Poland didn't have a government. They were under Nazi control. They were fighting the Nazis themselves. But at that same time, it didn't prevent them from doing something that they had done for 1,000 years before, which is basically being anti-Semitic and assault the Jews. They had actually a free hand at it suddenly. People forget that before the Nazi invasion in 1939, between 1933 and 1939, there was an anti-Semitic government in Poland that passed anti-Semitic laws that didn't allow Jews to work in any profession. They actually moved the Jews not into the physical ghettos, but they moved them in from the center of society where they had been for 1,000 years. Jews were part of Polish society for 1,000 years. That didn't keep them from pushing the Jews out of government jobs. They couldn't be lawyers. They couldn't do anything. Something that anti-Semites had done for generations in Europe. So the Nazis found very fertile ground in Poland, and trying to clear themselves of that is not going to work. What you have here is a situation of the Polish prime minister. He is perverting history, and it's going to backfire against them.
The Prime Minister Netanyahu is actually in Munich right now at this defense conference. He condemned the remarks as being outrageous, and we'll have to see what Israel does on the diplomatic front in terms of, I don't know, once again, summoning the Polish ambassador here in Israel, or what Israel's going to do. How will this affect trade relations with Poland? Will it have an impact economically? And speaking of, I want to ask you guys your opinion on this. I've been to Poland before. I went on the March of the Living back when I was 16 years old, and I visited went on a roots, as they call it in Hebrew, a Shorashim trip to see where, with my parents, to see what was the village where my dad was born in and fled in 1941. So I've been to that region twice before. What's your opinion on Israelis essentially providing millions and millions of dollars or shekels or whatever currency you want to refer to a year into essentially, and it sounds like a horrible term, Holocaust tourism, if you will. I mean, I hate that, it sounds terrible even to say such a thing, but here you have every single year, you have thousands of Israeli high school and college kids or people who are in the army going and visiting these death camps and seeing what the Nazis did to the Jewish people, and specifically in Poland, because that's where the majority of the camps were. Are you, and I go back and forth with this in my head all the time, are you for or against these organized trips to Poland, particularly children here in Israel? You can say the kids in the U.S., that's one thing, but the kids here in Israel, should they visit Poland, or should those resources be diverted by the Israeli government to other projects?
I think, Josh, there's no other way. I've visited camps outside of Berlin. It was a very, very powerful experience. It's something that you just cannot explain to people that haven't been there, that haven't stepped foot in those death camps. And I think, in a way, it's only 70 years, past from the time of the Holocaust. It's literally nothing, and within time we're going to see those survivors passed away, and we're going to see the next generation not really fully understanding what went there. And so I think it's extremely important to go there, to visit those camps, and to constantly remind the next generation what happened to our people.
Danny.
Well, here is one of the few times I disagree with Lital. I've had the past 2 years, I've worked with companies that represented the March of the Living on Yom HaShoah, and I had the opportunity to be there. I had always opposed it for precisely the reason. I don't think we should be encouraging their societies and their economies with the tons of money that is spent on that. I refused, and during my 4 days, and comes together being 8 days in 2 years, I did not spend a cent in Poland. I refused to buy anything, just the food that they had there, but I would not purchase anything there because I don't think we should be helping them. It's not only because they're responsible, it's because it is the biggest Jewish cemetery in the world. And because of the fact, as I mentioned before, that Jews were part of Polish society for 1,000 years, and yet it didn't prevent them, and it didn't do anything to save their lives, I think it's indicative of Europe and its behavior towards the Jews. I personally would never set foot in Germany. I was born in Germany on an American Air Force base, but I refuse to go back to Germany. I don't purchase anything German. And I think that's one way of expressing our displeasure, because as you can see, 75 years later, after the Holocaust, it's almost as if they haven't learned a thing. They go back to the anti-Semitic ways. The German population, the Polish population are trying to shed themselves of the responsibility. And I think we have the state of Israel today. You don't have to go there to see it. And it's not the same. Because you're going and you see the green fields. I actually asked one of the survivors there, I said, look, it's very pastoral the way it looks here. He says, no, the green didn't exist. There was no green. It was all mud. I said, why? He said, because we were so hungry we ate the grass. And they had the Polish on the other side who would make sure they wouldn't escape, because if anybody tried to escape, they would be clear to inform the Germans that somebody had escaped the camps themselves. So seeing it, yes, you can see it in Yad Vashem, you can see it in movies. You don't have to be physically there to get the understanding of it. It doesn't help in any way. I haven't changed my mind about that, even being there myself.
So there you have Danny and Lital disagreeing on it. I go back and forth with it in my head all the time. On one hand, I've been there and I've seen it. On the other hand, it pains me to put any money into that economy and support them through this. I want to call it Holocaust tourism. It sounds sick, but that's in fact what it is. And also, if you take a situation like Majdanek death camp in the middle of Lublin, you talk about how the Poles say they didn't know what was going on. I mean, that camp is in the middle of a city, and not only was it in the middle of a city back then in 1941, but today, Majdanek and what remains of it, it's actually a camp that was left as was. It wasn't touched. It's not a museum. It actually looks like it did back in 1945, 1941 through 1945. And, the way it's treated today, there's a concession stand where they sell food in Majdanek. The people there use it. It's almost like a central park where people are walking their dogs and bike riding. So it pains me, and I've done it. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. So I've been to Poland, and I want to ask the listeners what your thoughts on this are. Email me, josh@thelandofisrael.com. Do you think Israeli children should go and visit Poland? We're going to take a quick break, but Danny has one more thing to say.
No, what surprised me in Auschwitz was that there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken just outside the camp itself, and it's very surreal.
Yeah, it blows my mind today. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back. You're listening to Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. Be in touch, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, at Josh Hasten. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Eve Harrow, host of Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. You can hear a new show from me every Sunday, and every day of the week, shows from another one of my very talented fellow show hosts. Reach me, Eve, at thelandofisrael.com, and keep listening, everybody. We love your feedback. The Land of Israel, coming at you every day, every week. That's the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com, recording here from the offices of MIDA. I'm here with Danny Seaman, the editor of the English online magazine known as MIDA. Check them out online. And we're also here with a newbie to the show, Lital Shemesh, Israeli TV celeb, news personality, anchor on Channel 20. It is February 18th, Sunday night, recording the 3rd of Adar, 5778. And this is supposed to be a happy month, right? That's what you're supposed to have here. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. Again, praying for our soldiers who are wounded on the Gaza border on Saturday over the weekend, I believe it was. And we're praying for them. At the same time, another unhappy, unfortunately, event happened. Of course, if you're listening in the U.S. and, of course, around the world, everyone knows now with this madman, horrible, evil, let's call him what he is, Nicholas Cruz, killed 17 teachers and students at a school in Florida. Today, it is being reported, Times of Israel, citing CNN, that he was involved with all these different anti-Semitic online chat groups and whatnot. 5 Jews, in fact, were murdered in this attack. And he's just a horrible person. And the question now, the immediate reaction I saw on Twitter following the story as it was developing was, this is the fault of the NRA. This is the fault of those who believe in guns being easily accessible in the United States. And of course, to compare that to the situation here in Israel, you had Governor Mike Huckabee saying that Israel knows how to deal with these situations, and we have a guard outside of every school. The NRA essentially backing Mike Huckabee's statement, talking about how Israel knows how to deal with the situation because of the fact that we have armed guards outside of all of our schools and all of our cafes, our malls, or what have you here in Israel. On the other hand, people are pointing out and I guess opposing Huckabee and the rest by saying that the reason these tragedies don't happen in Israel and they shouldn't happen in Israel, we have enough problems as it is, are the fact that Israel does have stricter gun laws, and I can definitely attest to the fact, my listeners know that I carry a gun at all times, that it is much harder here in Israel to get a gun than it is in the U.S. So I'm going to ask Lital and Danny, what do you think? Do you think that, thank God, these things don't happen here because gun laws are stricter, or is it because of the fact that a lot of people are prepared with guns? Which one is it?
I think it's not one-dimensional. That's what people forget. It's not either or. I think it's a combination of both, and that's why it works here in Israel. Because on one hand, yes, you do have weapons, but you also have a measure of responsibility. You have people who understand the seriousness of weapons, and we all go through training. We're all in the military. Lital serves in the combat unit. She was a border policewoman when she was younger, and she does her reserve now. And just a few weeks ago, she posted on Facebook pictures of her using a weapon in what's it called, the mitvach,
the shooting range.
Shooting range. You see, I forget your English.
I know what that's like.
So she was at a shooting range using weapons, and people train here, and it's treated very seriously. On the other hand, not just everybody carries a weapon. I have a weapon. I have a pistol that I carry around, given to me because I served as an officer in the IDF and the paratroopers, and they know that when you have a weapon, you're a serious person. And the same thing, I relay that to my children. I don't let them, they don't see it, they don't touch it, but I educated them about it. I even told them with toy weapons, start with the toys. You don't point it at people. You don't put the finger on the trigger. Weapons are a serious issue. On the other hand, I'm very happy that the schools here have armed guards. And sometimes it's an attractive young woman who just finished her military service. Other times it's an older guy. I have two schools that my kids go to, and they have at both sides, an older guy, he knows all the kids by name. He knows the parents. The same way with the younger woman who's been there for a few years now. And this is important. It gives a sense of security. The children adore her and they adore him. He's like an older grandfather. So having them protect the kids is very important. When you have somebody armed, it's not only the evil people walking around with weapons, but at the same time, even for the good people, it's an issue of responsibility.
It's also important to say that evil people or criminals are getting illegal guns. It's very easy to get illegal guns. You go and you buy it illegally, and most of the criminals are using guns illegally. It's as simple as that. So
my listeners know that, and I've told the story many times. I'm not going to tell it again. I'm happy to do so if you email me. That my gun saved my life, and I've shared the story. I mean, it was October 7th, 2015. I'm not going to get into it now. Email me. I'm happy to share it again if you missed it, or go back to an episode of the show. So I definitely understand the importance of being able to have a gun. And that being said, it is a rigorous, bureaucratic, for a good reason, process. You can't just go walk into Walmart as you can in the U.S. and get a gun. So I see both sides of that, but I'm leaning towards the side of the Mike Huckabees, of those who say, it's not guns don't kill, people kill. On that hand, I'm going to lean towards Huckabee and speaking from firsthand experience on how a gun can save a life. I definitely think that the right people should have guns, and those evil people out there, I believe, if they want to kill you, whether it's a truck or a knife or whatever, in today's society and day and age around the world, unfortunately, we see it all too often here in Israel and in other places, that there are bad people out there, and you can use anything from a baseball bat to who knows what, not to give ideas, but and that is happening from time to time here and in Europe, of course, and all over the world. So I see both points there. One last item. We are out of time here on another edition of Israel Uncensored. A little lighter. Okay, we've been pretty serious as we have talked about all the different events in the news, and there's so much more we could discuss today. We'd like to finish here, as I usually do, and talk about a BDS fail. A BDS fail. Yet again, another very news. It is news. Unfortunately, it is news. A BDS fail, another popular band. I think one of Bresky's favorite. I'm not going to speak for him. I shouldn't. The Backstreet Boys, the boy band popular in the 1990s. They're coming back to Israel. They'll be performing. They've been here before, 2 years after a successful. They had a 3-show run in the Holy Land. They're coming back for one show. This one is April 22nd at the Rishon LeZion Live Park. Tickets go on sale soon, and the prices are listed here according to Wina. Danny, will you be going to the Backstreet Boys?
I don't know. It's Lital's generation. Let her talk about him.
Lital, will you be going to the Backstreet Boys?
I have to say, I went to their previous show, and I'm not kidding by saying this, but it was the happiest day of my life. The happiest day. I was the happiest girl on earth. Like, I was a huge fan of the Backstreet Boys when I was in high school. I still haven't...
It's like 2 years ago.
Yeah. And I still haven't got married, so I couldn't define that as my happiest day of my life. So the Backstreet Boys show was like, I was on cloud 9.
No judgment. So you're going to go back?
Of course I am.
Excellent. We'll get a report on the Backstreet Boys after the show. And as last week we mentioned, Ozzy Osbourne came here. Last summer we had the biggest names in rock and roll and in music here. We had Aerosmith, we had Guns N' Roses, Radiohead, and the rest. So you can stick it, Roger Waters and your friend Lord, who are boycotting here. Another victory. Another victory.
Speak ill about the Lord.
No. This has an E at the end. My chair here in the studio just collapsed. But another BDS fail. Always good to end. And I don't know if I'm going to go see the Backstreet Boys. And those who know me, I have a little bit of a guilty pleasure. There's some of their songs, and I'm not going to get into all the details. I don't hate the Backstreet Boys, and now maybe I'll go listen to them. The fact that they're not listening to the haters and the Roger Waters out there and those who hate the state of Israel and try to hurt us, not only BDS, but they're actually trying to destroy the state of Israel. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Backstreet Boys for coming and playing in Israel. We're going to end on that note. Thanks again to Danny Seaman and our new friend here, Lital Shemesh. Check her out on Channel 20 and go to her Facebook page to check out everything she's doing. And, of course, Danny Seaman, you can check out on Facebook as well. All the work he's doing at MIDA. Big shout-out once again, Benjamin Bresky. And get in touch with me one last time during the week, Josh@thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, @Josh Hasten. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next week, everybody out there, be safe. Shalom, shalom from Jerusalem.